Hi everyone. I'd like to talk about how to use the club face properly in your golf swing, a diagnostic test to figure out if it's the club face that's letting you down, and then a few fixes once we know it's the club face that we need to correct. Please like, subscribe, and comment. Okay, so before we take a deep dive into the club face, there's a few things I want to go over to make sure everybody's on the same page. Now, the first thing I want to tell you about is I'm going to refer to the toe of the club. And for those of you that may be newer golfers, the toe of the club is the end furthest away from the shaft. Another thing we need to talk about, which is really important, is the club face is the most important variable for the starting direction of the golf ball. So if my face is square at impact, the initial projection of the golf ball is going to be straight. Might curve once it gets out there. We'll talk about that in another video. If the face is pointed to the left, ball is going to launch left. And if the club face is pointed to the right, the ball is going to launch out to the right. Now, really the genesis of this video came from a student I had recently, and I was showing him something, and I was saying, yeah, the club face is a little closed at the top of the backswing. And he goes, well, how do you know that? What does that mean? And I've been immersed in golf for, well, since I was 12, so the better part of 33 years. And to me, I just kind of sometimes take for granted the student knows what I'm talking about. But he was like, explain that to me, I'm not sure. So it made me take a step back. And as I was thinking about it, there might be a lot of people out there that aren't sure what the proper positions. You might know at address, okay, a square club face, the face is pointing towards the target. If it's closed, it's doing this. If it's open, it's doing this. We're certainly going to go over that. But we're also going to go over the different places in the golf swing. So halfway back, top of the golf swing, how do I know if it's open or closed? And as I mentioned earlier, a diagnostic test to figure out if yours is out of kilter one way or the other, and then some great fixes for you. Okay, so the first thing I want to go over is I want to go over a square club face. And you can see I have this oversized club here, which is going to help you to visualize the different positions in the golf swing. But let's start at address. So a square club face at address, I'm going to have the club face pointing to the target. So sometimes with juniors, what I'll do is I'll just take a little pen or a little magic marker and I'll put a little dot in the middle of their club face, and I'll tell them if that club face is pointing at the target, your club face is square. So that's at address. How about the halfway back position? So halfway back in the golf swing, what we want to see is we want to see the club at about a 45-degree angle, or you can see it's very parallel to my spine. So if you can see where my spine is, that club face, the leading edge of that club face is very square to the spine. When I get to the top of the backswing, you should see the club again is at about a 45-degree angle, and you can see that it's very parallel to my left arm. That's one of the checks as golf professionals when we're looking at swings on video. How is the club face relative to the left arm? And you can see mine is very square here and lined up very well. The next place we look is halfway down, and I can tell you this is where I see people go wrong day in and day out on my lesson tee, and I'll get into that more when we're talking about an open club face. But halfway down, if we're talking square club face, you can see again I'm at a 45-degree angle with the club face, and it's very parallel to my spine angle at this point in the golf swing. Now I just go ahead and finish the golf swing, and I can see, it'll probably be harder for you to see, that that face again is pointing at the target, so it's very square for impact. Now I think something that's really important to understand is this club is going to change positions many times during the golf swing. So just because I have it square at address does not mean it's going to return square. It can return open, closed, and we'll go over those terms and what it looks like relative to the club face in just a moment. So really important to know, just because I start with it in a good position doesn't mean that's where it's going to be. There's a lot of variables going on during a golf swing that can affect how I deliver the club face. So now that we have our mind wrapped around and we fully understand a square club face, let's talk about a closed club face. So for a right-handed golfer, a closed club face at address, the face would be pointing off to the left. So again, if I put a dot in the middle of the club face here, it would be pointing back here behind me or to the left. The halfway back position, you could see that the club face is pointing to the ground. This means it's closed. At the top of the backswing, now you can see the club face is pointing to the sky, very kind of Dustin Johnson-esque, if you will. And that would be a closed position at the top of the backswing. Now I bring it halfway down. Again, the club face is pointing to the ground. I return it to impact, and you can see that that face is pointed left again. So that would be me swinging the club in closed positions throughout the whole swing. And as I mentioned with the square club face, just because I start with it closed, just because it's closed halfway back or at the top, does not mean I'm going to deliver it back closed or to impact closed. There's a good probability of that, but it's not a guarantee because, again, a lot of things going on during the golf swing. All right, so we've covered square, we've covered closed. Now what I want to talk about is an open club face, and this is the one definitely for the demographic that I teach in Naples is the one that I see people struggle with, and it's not necessarily open at address or in the backswing, but we'll talk about it in the downswing and what I see often. So again, at address, my little dot in the middle of my club face, the club face would be pointed off to the right. That's an open club face. When I get it into this halfway back position, the toe is going to be pointing to the sky. It could even be more. I've seen it really wide open with some players. I get to the top of the backswing. You can see the toe of the club's pointing to the ground. Even a portion of the club face is pointing to the ground. So this would be an open position at the top. Now this is the biggie because I see people get it in a very good position on the way back at the top of the golf swing. Some people don't, but a lot of people do. But this is what I see day in and day out is halfway down, the club face is open. So you can see, again, toes pointing towards the sky. It could be pointing more than that. And now as I bring the club into impact, the face is open. And just like it applied to the square and to the closed, just because I'm swinging it in open positions and maybe I have it open at the top does not guarantee it's going to be open when I get back to impact. But this is just kind of a model, if you will, of what the club face should be, or excuse me, how to understand the club face during the golf swing. And is it open, is it closed? And I know a lot of people, because I stand on the range all day for a living, I see people come out and film their own swings, and sometimes you might not know what you're looking at, or you might see the ball going left and don't realize the club face is closed at the top of your backswing and it's also closed at impact. So hopefully this will help you from a diagnostic standpoint going further or going forward if you're somebody who likes to look at their own golf swing. Now the next thing we're going to talk about is we're going to talk about a great diagnostic way to test if your club face is too open or too closed when you get to impact. Okay, so before I go too much further, I want to mention my fellow lefties. Like we've done our whole life, this video I did shoot it right-handed, so everything I'm saying would just be flipped around, or we're going to have to reverse it in our mind. But by now we're experts at doing that. The other thing I want to talk about is just because you have the club face in a closed position at the top of your backswing, if you hit every shot dead straight and 4 feet away from the hole, I would not change that. So what I'm getting at here, there are some patterns that match an open club face, and there's some patterns that match a closed club face. I've already mentioned in the video Dustin Johnson. He would match a closed club face. He has the other matchups that allow that to work, and we all know he hits it pretty darn good. And the other name would be Webb Simpson. He's a guy who tends to have the club face a little bit more open during the golf swing, but again, uses it very effectively. He understands and has the other matchups that make that work. All right, so let's get into this diagnostic test that I have for you to figure out, is the club face too open or is it too closed when I'm swinging? And so the first thing we're going to need is we're going to need some context clues to know that it might be an open club face or a closed club face. So the first one, let's talk about an open club face. So my clues would be, as I'm hitting balls, I see the ball kind of weak and off to the right, fading, no punch behind it, maybe a really high ball flight, higher than normal. So that would be an indication that that club face may be open. Might be other variables that are causing it, but let's test the club face. And the way I would do that, or I do it on my driving range with my students, and honestly the reason I do this is to prove to them that it's the club face. I can already see by watching them swing, by watching it on video, that it's a club face issue, but to prove it to them, what I'll do is I'll have them hood the club face. So hooding would be just excessively closing the club face. Now a very important thing here is I don't want you to just close it and keep your original grip, because now the club could come back square or open just like it was before. I've got to close it excessively, hood it, and then get my grip. So I'm changing the club face relative to my grip, or I'm changing my hands relative to the club face and getting the club face in a much stronger position. Now I go ahead and I take my swing. If it's a club face issue, the ball is going to go dead straight and it's going to be solid. It's not going to be that weak off to the right. I see people's eyes open like, wow, that felt great. Or it may even go hard left. But again, the students are hooked because they haven't felt that kind of contact and the ball's coming out with a lot of force. So that would be if the club face is too open. Diagnostic test, hood the club face down. What's the result I get? You'll see either straight or left, and it'll feel really, really good. So now let's talk about somebody who's swinging it in closed positions, pulling it, losing it left all the time. That would be the context clues. It's like, okay, it's always left, I'm hooking it, how do I stop this? What I would have them do, and again, just in an effort to prove to themselves that it's a club face issue, from a diagnostic standpoint, is I would have them open the club face. So again, open the face first, then get your grip. They go ahead and make their golf swing. Now what do they see? They see, if it's a club face issue, they see the ball go dead straight or off to the right. And again, a player who's been missing the ball left for a while and all of a sudden sees it go right, they're happy for at least a week or two. 2 weeks later, they'll come back and say, okay, the ball's off to the right, how do I fix this? But at least we have identified that the club face is the issue. Now the next thing we have to do is fix it, right? What's the solution? The great question in golf instruction. What's the solution? And it's really quite simple. So if I diagnose that it was an open club face, so remember the ball was weak and off to the right, I hood the face down and now I'm hitting it straight or off to the left, the fix for that would be doing the opposite. And now that you've watched most of this video, you now understand the club face during the golf swing. So I now want to swing the club in closed positions. So to walk you through that, and this is really just a review at this point, halfway back the club face would be pointed more to the ground. At the top the club face would be pointed to the sky. Halfway down I would have it pointed back to the ground. And that would be swinging the club in closed positions. Now if I diagnosed that the club face was too closed, so the ball was going off to the left, pulled, off to the left hard, the fix, and then I used my diagnostic test and it went straight or off to the right, the fix here would be now swinging the club in open positions. So that would be halfway back, I've got the toe more to the sky. Top of the golf swing, I have the toe of the club pointed to the ground. Halfway down, again, the toe is pointed to the sky. And that would be my fix for having too closed a club face during the golf swing. Let's swing it more in open positions. So hopefully by now you understand how to use the club face properly during the golf swing. And my preference, and it's only a preference because as I've mentioned, there's players that use a closed club face effectively and there's players that use an open club face effectively. But a preference in teaching somebody would be to teach them how to swing it in square positions. And you're all aware of that now. So I want to mention again, please like this video, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and comment. What did you like? What didn't you like? What other questions might you have? What other videos would you like to see? And if this video helped you and you enjoyed it, there's a few other videos up here right now that you can go ahead and watch and will continue to help you improve your game. The other thing you can do is go ahead and send in your golf swing to me to analyze on the Swing Index app.